Okay, let's go. So we're on the top of Daf Chav Gimel, about 7-8 lines from the top of the Yamud. The first word on the line is Lamayit. The Gemara starts with Vaharei Truma. So again, this Gemara is discussing here the machlokes between Chizkiya and Rabavo. When the Torah writes the Isser of Achille, La Yoichal, La Seichal, and so on, what does that include? Chizkiya says it only includes Isser Achille, not Isser Ana. Isser Ana is only if the Torah changed the Lashon and wrote Lo Yei Ochel. Whereas Rabavo's opinion is, whenever the Torah writes Isser Achille, it includes Isser Hana as well. The only thing is, unless the Torah clearly points out that there's a Heter Hana, it's going to include Isser Hana as well. So the Gemara went through already a few different things. We went through, we did Gidanoshe, Dam, Ever Menachai, Sheira Niskal, Arla. And now the Gemara comes to another Isser, which is, the Torah uses the term Lo Seichal, or Lo Yoichal. Fragt the Gemara, Vaharei Trume, what does the Torah say by Trume? The Rachmana Amar, V'chol zar lo yoichal kodesh. A zar should not eat kodesh. If you're not a kohen, you're not allowed to eat the Trume. Otnan, and it says in a Mishnah, we learned this in Erevin, Ma'arvin l'nazir b'yayin. You can use wine, even a nazir could use wine for an Erev Tchumen. So the Erev Tchumen is placed there in order for him to be able to walk that distance, that he has food in that place, and it's as if he's living there, so he can walk that distance from there, 2,000 amas. So a nazir can use wine. Ol Yisrael b'truma, and even a Yisrael that can't eat any truma can use truma as well. Now, what's the reason for this? So if you remember what we learned then, one of the reasons is, and that's the reason that Rashi quotes here, is because both when it comes to a nazir and truma, even after you established it, your neder to be a nazir, or after you made your truma, you're able to retract it. You're able to be shoyal on your neder. So therefore, you're putting down the food over there, and it's potentially going to be available for you to use to be able to eat, and therefore it's a good Erev Tchumen. But the point is, the fact right now you weren't shoyal on your truma yet. And what do you see? That you can use your truma in the present state, and you can have hana of it. It's as if you're living there. So you're having hana of this truma. So this is the question on Rabavo. It says in the Torah, lo yoichal, regarding truma, and yet we say you can use your truma to make an Erev Tchumen with it. Rav Papa answers, Shani Hasam da makra trumaschem. When the Torah talks about truma, it uses the word trumaschem. It's your truma, meaning shalachem tehei, that it should belong to you. So what is the Torah saying over here? Although you're not allowed to eat it, you have to give it to the kayin. So it's asa ba'achila to anyone other than the kayin. But by writing trumaschem, it's letting you know that you're still allowed to have hana of it. And what's an example of hana? To use it for Erev Tchumen. Now, according to Chizkiya, what would he learn out from Trumaschem? If according to him, when the Torah writes Lo Yoichal, we already know that it doesn't include Hana, so why does it have to say Trumaschem? Trumaschem, D'chol Yisrael Ka'omar. When it says Trumaschem, there's nothing unique to be learned out of this. This is just the way the Torah writes this. It's talking about your Truma, meaning it's the produce that grew in your field, and you give the Kayin your Truma. So Trumaschem, there's no unique drasha that you learn out from this. This is just the way the Torah writes it. Nazir. Now we have the same question regarding Nazir, which was mentioned in that Mishnah. What does it say regarding a Nazir? You shouldn't eat the peels or the pits from the grapes. So the Torah writes Lo Yoichal. What does it say in that Mishnah? A Nazir can use the wine for his Erev Tchumen. So you see that a Nazir could have hana of the wine, even though the Torah writes Lo Yoichal. So this is a question on Rabavahu. Truth is that this is the same Mishnah that we quoted before, and at that Mishnah it says Nazir before Truma. So why is the Gemara asking the question from Truma before it asks from Nazir? So the Mefarshim say, because even though in the Mishnah Nazir comes before Truma, but in the Pasuk, the Isser about eating Truma comes before. So it goes in the Seder of the Pasuk. But it's the same question. Answers the Gemara, Shani Hasam de Amakra Nizroi. When the Torah talks about the Nazir, it uses the term Nizroi. What does the word Nizroi teach me? In that pasuk, actually, it says Kol Yemei Nizroi Migefen Hayayim Chatzanim Adzag Lo Yoichal. So Nizroi means Shaloi Yehei. The Torah is telling you that although he's not allowed to eat the wine or the grapes or the peels of the grapes and so on, but it's his to have a gnaw of it. Rav Ashi says you learn it out from a different place. It says Kodesh Yiyeh Gadol Pera Sa Reishay, that he has to let his hair grow, and it's Kodesh. What does it say regarding the hair? That it's Kodesh, meaning Giduloi Kodesh, his hair is Kodesh. He's not allowed to have a no from his hair, but Ve'ein Dava Acha Kodesh. The other Isurim that apply to a Nazir will not be Kodesh. The Isser Ano does not apply to that. That's what we learn it out from. So the Gemara asks on this, Midi Ve'ein Davar Acher Ksiv? How you medayik this of the pasuk? Does it say in the pasuk that only the hair is kaddish and not anything else? If kaddish yeh would be an extra word, so you could be medayik this, but it's not an extra word. It doesn't say in the Torah that something else is not kaddish. So how could you learn this out? Ela machvarte ke de Marzutra. The answer is like Marzutra said, that nizroi teaches me that the things that are also for a nazir besides here is his to have a na'av. Another case is Vaharei Chodosh. How about the Isser of Chodosh, which is a new crop that comes in the Chodesh of Nisan? You're not allowed to eat it until you bring the carbon ha'omer in the Beis HaMikdash. So what does it say regarding this Isser of Chodosh? You should not eat it until this day when you bring the carbon omer. So it says Leisaychlu. According to Rabavo, that should include an Isser Hana as well. Utnan, and it says in a Mishnah, Kaitzer l'shachas. You are allowed to reap and use it when it's shachas. Shachas means when it's not ripe at all. It's like grass, and you're cutting it. Usually it's used for an animal to eat. So you are allowed to cut it, that is, for that purpose, even before the carbon omer. Umachel behema, and you're allowed to give it to eat to the behema. According to Taisvis, this is a continuation. You're cutting it shachas and you're giving it to eat to the behema. According to Rashi, umachal behema is a separate thing. Rashi says machal behema means even if it is ripe wheat, you're allowed to pluck it. You're not going to reap it in the regular way, but you're allowed to pluck one at a time if you're giving it to the animals to eat. So the point is, what do you see here? That chodosh, you're allowed to have hana of it even before you're allowed to eat it, even though the pasuk writes lo yisaychlu. And says the Gemara, Rav Shmaya, Shani Hasam, again over there the Torah says clearly, the Makra Kitzir Chem, that it's your Katzir. By writing Kitzir Chem, it means Kitzir Chem Shalachem, that you're not allowed to eat it, but you're allowed to have Hana. Shalachem Yehei. The Idach, according to Chizkiah, why is the Torah using the term Kitzir Chem if we know that you're allowed to have Hana because the Torah writes only Leisaychal? Kitzir Chem, the Chol Yisrael mashma. All Kitzir Chem means is that it's the katzah that's being cut by Yidden. Again, there's no drasha to be learned out from this. This is the way the Torah usually writes this. Another case, Vaharei Shrotzim. The Rachman Omar, Sheketz Hulachem, Sheketz Hu Lo Ye'achel, that is. So by Shrotzim, the Torah actually writes Lo Ye'achel. So now this is going to be a question both according to Chizkiah and Rabbaval, because the Torah writes Lo Ye'achel. Otnan, and it says in the Mishnah, Tzayode Chayev V'oifis V'dogim, a person that's hunting, he's capturing animals, birds, or fish. Shenizdamnu lahem minim tmeim, and there are minim tmeim that happen to come into his net. Shrotzim that happen to come into his net. Mutarin l'moichram, he can do business with them, and he can sell them l'nachrim to goyim. So what do you see here? You're allowed to have a na of shrotzim. But, as we'll see, the Gemara is going to point out, you're only allowed to have a na of shrotzim or any chayas, behemoths, and things that are tamei, only if it came b'diavad into your net. And you now own it, you're allowed to have a na of it. Lichatchila, though, a person shouldn't make business with any chayas and behemoths tameis, only if it's b'diavad in your possession. But either way, you see that you're allowed to have a na. But so this is a question both according to Chizkiah and Rabavo. If the Torah writes lo yei ochel, why should you be allowed to do business with it? And says the Gemara over there, the pasuk says Shani Hasam do Makra lochem. The Torah writes lochem shalochem yehei, that it belongs to you. So by writing lochem, the Torah clarified that it does belong to you. In that same pasuk, it writes lochem, or in the pasuk after, where is it? Chalasheretz Asheretz, and then a few psukim before actually, it writes lochem. So we know that the shrotzim belongs to you to have anah. Asks the Gemara, if the Torah writes lochem that you could have anah, if so, afilu lechatchila nami. So why can't you do business with shrotzim or any chayis and behemoths tmei, and why can't you do business with it lechatchila? Answers the Gemara, shani hacha the omakra yihiyu b'havyasan yihu. The Torah writes yihiyu. On the other hand, the Torah is telling you yihu, which means that it should be as is, meaning that it's strengthening the Isser that you can't do any business with it lechatchila. Only b'diavad, once it's in your possession, you're allowed to do business with it, but not lechatchila. Okay, Taisus over here points out, if you can't do any business, are we saying over here that anything that's aser ba'achila, you're not allowed to l'chatchila do any business with it? That's what we're learning out from Yehiyu? If so, how would a Yid not be allowed to do any business with horses or donkeys? Taisus says, Susim v'chamayrim heichiz avninon. How could a Yid, or pet shop or whatever it is, how could a Yid sell horses and so on? You can't do any business with this? So Taisus answers, Yeshloima de b'midi da'achila mayri dafka. It's talking about b'midi da'achila, and a horse and a donkey are not made for eating, they're made for work, they're made for riding on it and so on. Talking about things that are made to eat, those things that are made to eat, and the Torah asad, and ba'achila, it's also asering to have hana, doing business with it, l'chatchila, b'di'evet, if it's in your possession, you're allowed. But horses, donkeys, and things like that, or Taisus actually says also regarding a camel, it's made for work. So that you're allowed to use l'chatchila for your work and for business, not a problem. Okay.
For shek is lechem, it's mashma, just the opposite.
The what?
Not that it belongs to you. Shek.
It should be shekets for you. Correct, and a chanami. But the point is that the lechem is an extra word. The Torah could have just said shekets you. I would notice for you. By writing lechem, it's adding that it's yours.
The question is, by Pesach, in all the places where it says lo yoichol, it doesn't see these l'shenis lachem, trumas, chem.
So if you notice what happened over here in the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to point this out on Amud Beis, the Gemara went through so many different Tisurim, and in every case where it says lo yoichal, and Abavo holds, whenever it says lo yoichal, it includes Isser Hana. But in every single case, the Torah writes something to say that no, it's only Isser Achila and not Hana. So the exception almost becomes the rule itself. Whenever the Torah writes lo yoichal, it's always writing an exception to say, although it should have included Hana, but it doesn't include Hana.
It would have been easier to say here, Isa,
and a chanami. But here, so we'll see soon on the Gemara Amud Beis. The Gemara is going to say. We'll see. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Ulechizkiah. So over here regarding this case of Shrotzim, according to Chizkiah, Lama lila michtav lo yachel u'maisi lachem lemishrei. So here the Gemara asks this question according to Chizkiah. Why does the Torah have to write lo yei achel and then write lachem to say that it's permitted? Lo lichtav rachmana lo yei achel. Let the Torah not write lo yei achel. Let it just write lo yoichal v'lo boya lachem. And then you don't need a lachem to say that it's permitted. So the Gemara asks this question according to Chizkiah, but it does not ask this question according to Rabbi Vo, because you can't ask that question according to Rabbi Vo. According to Rabbi Vo, the Torah is writing yoichal. That's the only way to write Isser Achila. What should it write? Elamai Chizkiah, Rabbi Vo's opinion is whenever you write Isser Achila, automatically it includes Hana. As I explained already before, the Rambam says Isser Achila and Isser Hana are really one and the same thing. The whole Isser of Achila is mitzad the Hana Sheba Achila. So the Torah has to write Yochel. You can't say the Torah shouldn't write it. But according to Chizkiah, that the Torah switches the word and writes Yochel, and then it writes Lachem, to say that it's Mutter Ba'ana. Why would the Torah do that? My whole source that Ye'achel means Isser Hana comes from here. The very fact that here the Torah writes Lachem to say that it's Mutter Ba'ana shows me that without the word Lachem, I would have said that it's Aseh Ba'ana. Meaning the word Ye'achel in itself, the shinui, that it writes Ye'achel and not Yoichal, wouldn't be enough of a reason to say that Ye'achel means Isser Hana as well. We'll see soon in the Gemara Amud Beis, there's another Tana that says that even when it says Ye'achel, it also means Achila, not Hana. From where did Chizkiah take that Ye'achel means also Isser Hana? From the fact that here by Shrotzim, the Torah writes Lachem, and Ye'achel, which is extra, could have just written Yoichal, so I see that Ye'achel means Isser Hana. That's the source of Chizkiah.
So as far as Ye'achel,
yeah, I mean, Rashi explained before, Ye'achel means it shouldn't come to be eaten. Come to be eaten means that you have a hana, you sell it, and you make money, and then you buy food from it, so it goes into the word, but that itself wouldn't be enough of a source if not for the fact that we see it here by Shrotzim. After everything, finally the Gemara comes back to chametz. Even though we're learning Masechta Pesachim, the Gemara goes through all the different Tisurim that there are, and the last one, the Gemara comes back to chametz. V'harei chametz, the Rachmana Omar, what does the Torah say by chametz? Lo ye'achel chametz. So it does say ye'achel by chametz. Okay, so this is according to both Chizkiah and Rabbi Vo. It should be an Isser Hana as well. Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Rabbi Yosi Aglili Yom. Rabbi Yosi Aglili's opinion is that chametz is mutter b'hana. Chametz is asa ba'achila. We don't pass like Rabbi Yosi Aglili. But Rabbi Yosi Aglili's opinion is chametz is asa ba'achila, and chametz is also with ba'yirah, ba'yimatzeh, but you can do business with chametz on Pesach, as long as it's not in your house. So Rabbi Yosef Glili says, Toma al atzmach. Wonder to yourself, ask yourself the question, how is it that chametz, what's a source that chametz should be asr b'hana the entire Pesach? We're going to learn this soon. This is coming up in the Gemara in this Perek over here, in Daf Chav Ches, where we're going to go through different opinions regarding the Isser of chametz. But this is Rabbi Yosef Glili's opinion. But the question is, how could Rabbi Yosef Glili say this if the pasuk says Yei achel? Yei achel, according to everybody, includes also Isser hana.
If it's not in your rishos,
If
it's not in your rishos,
okay.
how can you have hana?
That's what he's saying. If it's not in your rishos, you could have hana. If it's in your rishos, you have to get rid of it. You have to get it out of your rishos, and you have to burn it or get rid of it. If it's not in your rishos, you could have hana of the chametz. You're not allowed to eat the chametz. You're not allowed to have it in your rishos, but you're allowed to have hana of it. That's Rabbi Yosef Glili's opinion. But the Torah says yei ochel. Answers the Gemara, Hasam, the Amakra. So according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, you have over here as well, the Torah says an exception. V'lo yira l'chasair. The Torah writes the word l'cha. Shalcha yehe, the chametz which is also for you to eat is yours to have anah. The Rabbanon, how did the Rabbanon teach the word l'cha? The Rabbanon, which we paskin like, say that chametz is also b'hana as well. Shalcha, we had this drasha before. Shalcha yataraya, aval ataraya shalacherim shal gavoya. The Torah is telling you only chametz that you own, you're not allowed to have anah of.
No.
But or is not allowed to be seen in your possession, that is, but you're allowed to have chametz in your possession that doesn't belong to you, or it belongs to hektish, or it belongs to a guy, and so on. Idach, according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, the Torah writes lo yira l'chasar twice. There's once in Parshas Boy, once in Parshas Re'eh. It says it twice. V'idach, according to the Rabbanon, it actually he says chad benachri shekibashtoi v'chad benachri sheloi kibashtoi. The fact that the Torah writes l'cha twice is not going to be enough to teach me that you could have anah of the chametz. One is referring to the chametz of a guy that's under your rulership, that is, and one is regarding a guy that's not in your possession, not under your rulership. We had this before in the Gemara. You have a guy that is living with you in your property, or a guy that's your eved, and one is talking about a guy that's not living with you. Ve'edach, according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, tlasa l'cha ksivi. If you look in the Torah, you'll see it says 3 times lo yira l'cha sa'ir. It says actually twice lo yira l'cha sa'ir and once lo yira l'cha chametz. But it says l'cha 3 times. Ve'edach, and according to the Rabbanon, the 3rd time doesn't count because we need that. Chad b'sa'ir v'chad b'chametz. One is talking about sa'ir and one is talking about chametz. It's not the same thing. But tzrichin, I need all 3 times to teach me that I'm not over on the isra of bal yira unless you own the chametz. So we don't have any lacha to teach me that it's mutter b'hana. Okay, this subject comes back up. I mean, this is Masechta Pesachim here, so the Gemara is not going to leave this. Later in Daf Chav Ches, we're going to go through this in detail again, b'negei to the machlokes, whether chametz is asa b'hana or not. Says the Gemara, so now the Gemara concluded all the isurim. They went through everything to show why it's only asa b'achila and not asa b'hana. And really, if you paid attention to what happened over here, there was only 2 exceptions. Chametz, according to the Rabbanon, and Shoyer Haniskal was the other case, which is Asa Ba'ana as well. It's only everything else. It's always only Asa Ba'achila, not Asa Ba'ana. There's actually one more case, which is a machlokes, which is Gid Hanosha. Gid Hanosha is a machlokes Rab Shimon and Rab Yehuda, whether it's Asa Ba'achila, whether it's Asa Ba'ana or not. Only also Asa Ba'ana. But otherwise, everything else the Gemara showed how the pasuk writes that it's also only Ba'achila. So now the Gemara says, should we say that Leimike Tanoi? Is this machlokes of Chizke and Rabavo a machlokes Tanoim? Where do we see a machlokes Tanoim about this? It says in the pasuk, Yei Ose L'chol Melacha. So the full pasuk there, it's talking about Chelev of a nevela. The pasuk says, Daber b'nei Yisrael leimer kol Chelev shor v'kesev lo yisechelu. Then it says v'chelev nevela and Chelev treifa yasa l'chol melacha. The Chelev of a nevela and of a treifa could be used for any work, but you shouldn't eat it. Let's say you have the fats of an animal and you use it somehow to grease your wheels, let's say, or to smear it on something. So that chaylev could be used for any work. That's what the pasuk says. Why is the Torah adding the word l'chol? For all your work. Because I would think to say, l'melechas gevoya yehei mutter, that it could only be used for malacha by hektish, by gavoya, in the Beis HaMikdash. L'malachas hedyet yehei aser. But for any other malacha, I would think that it should be aser. Right? So I would think maybe only in the Beis HaMikdash it could be used. So Rashi points out, because the chaylev, why would I think that in the Beis HaMikdash it's different? Because the chaylev is burnt on the Mizbeach. So there's an achilas mizbeach. The mizbeach consumes the chaylev itself and the karbonis. So maybe the chaylev could also be used for work in the Beis Hamikdash. Huh?
You can bring a treifa out on the mizbeach.
No. But the chaylev in general is aser. Of all animals, right? Not only of a nevela. Chaylev in general is aser. But nevertheless, chaylev is burnt in the mizbeach. So the chaylev of a nevela as well, or chaylev in general. We're not only talking about the chaylev of a nevela. The chaylev in general, because it can be eaten on the mizbeach, that is, the mizbeach eats it, so therefore I would think it could be used for a malacha as well in the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore the Torah has to say l'chol malacha, that tamad loy l'chol malacha, that it can't be used for any work whatsoever. Divrei Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. That's what Rabbi Yossi HaGlili says. So again, ye'asa l'chol malacha, it's saying that it could be used. It could be used for any work, not only work in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Akiva says the pasuk is not coming to be matter, the work that you could have a gnaw of it, to use it. That's not what it's about. The l'chol malach is teaching me something else. Sheyachol, I would think, l'meleches hedyit yehei tocher. I would think it's talking actually about specifically the chaylev of a nevela. The chaylev of a nevela is tameh. The issue here that we're dealing with, according to Rabbi Akiva, is not the Isser, we're dealing with the Tumah. That the chaylev of the nevela is tameh, like a nevela itself. So I would think that for the malacha of a hedyet, it would be tahar, that it would be tahar to use. L'malachas gevaya yeh tameh, but to use in the Beis Hamikdash, it's tameh. So he says it in the reverse. That maybe I would say hektish is on a higher level, a higher standard of tumah, as we know, and therefore for hektish I would say that the chaylev of an avela is tameh, but for hedyet the chaylev is not tameh. Again, the chaylev for a hedyet is tameh, and for the chaylev of hektish it is tameh. Talmud loyma l'chol malacha. So therefore the pasuk tells me that even for a hedyet it's also tameh. So we have over here a machlekes, what the pasuk l'chol malacha is coming to teach me. And the Gemara spells out the machlekes. Rabbi Yossi HaGlili l'tumah l'tara l'ayitzrich kra. According to Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, when we talk about the chaylev of a nevela, the pasuk here is not coming to let me know anything about the tumah and tara of it. Ki yitzrich kra. What is the pasuk when it writes l'chol malacha coming to teach me? Le'isr u'leheter. It's coming to tell me the isr of hana, or the heter of hana. To what extent the heter of the hana goes? That the heter of hana goes for any malacha, for the malacha of a hedyet and for the malacha of hektish. Rabbi Akiva, issa v'heter leitzarech kra. For the issa and heter, I don't need any pasuk. Ki itzrich kra. What do I need a pasuk for? L'tumah or l'tara. I only need a pasuk regarding the status of tumah and tara of the chaylev, that it's tameh not only for a hektish, but it's also tameh for a hedyet. That's the machlekes. So what's the basis of their machlekes? What does it say there in the pasuk regarding the chaylev? It says lo yisechelu, you shouldn't eat it, or lo yisechluhu, you shouldn't eat it. So the question is, when it says lo yisechluhu, does that include Isser Anah or not? So this is the machlokes of Chizkiah and Rabavo. Says the Gemara, my love b'hakam miflagi. Don't you think that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi HaGlili are arguing in the same machlokes as Chizkiah and Rabavo? The Rabbi Yossi HaGlili sava, Rabbi Yossi HaGlili holds lo yisaychlu. When the Torah writes lo yisaychlu, mashma bein isachila bein isana. So regarding the chaylev, it says lo yisaychlu, not to eat it. So it includes already not you're not allowed to eat it, and you're not allowed to have any anah. So v'chi asekra lemishrei lenevela bahana. When the Torah comes to say that the nevela is mutter bahana, or others say that you have to take out the word nevela, it goes on chaylev. When the Torah comes to say that you're allowed to do malacha with it, so it's coming lemishrei nevela bahana asa. It's coming to say that you're allowed to have hana. Because without the Torah being matter, it bahana, I would have said that it's aser. Because achila means even isra hana as well, like the opinion of Rabavahu. So therefore he says that the heter of this pasuk is focusing on the heter hana. Rabbi Akiva savar, however, Rabbi Akiva holds isra achila mashma, isra hana le mashma. When the Torah writes le seichlu, it only means isra achila. It does not mean isra hana. I don't need any pasuk to tell me the heter of isra hana. It doesn't include that in the beginning. V'chi yasekra le tumah v'tara. The pasuk is only coming to tell me regarding the chaylev of a nevela, which is tameh, and it's telling you that you can use it for the work, both for a hedyet and even for hektish. So the question, so you see over here that the machlokes of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi HaGlili seems to be based on the same machlokes as Rabavo and Chizkiah. What's the meaning of lo yisaychlu? Does it mean isra hana or not? Says the Gemara, lo, not necessarily. The kula alme lo yisaychlu mashma bein isra achila bein isra hana. Everybody agrees that lo yisaychlu means both isra achila and isra hana. But for hacha b'haka miflagi. Here, when it talks about the chaylev of a nevela, the machlokes is as follows. We had this before. The Gemara said, Rabbi Yossi Aglili savar keshehutra nevela hi hutra chalava v'gida loy hutra. When the Torah writes the heter by nevela, we had before the pasuk. The Gemara brought the pasuk. What does it say by nevela? That you shouldn't eat it. But then what does the Torah say? You can give it to a guy, or you can give it to a ger toishav, a gerasha b'sharecha tetnena, oy machal lenachri. You can sell it to a guy. So the Torah was mater on nevela bahana. The question is the chaylev and the gid that's in the body of the nevela included in that heter or not? So one opinion is that's what they're arguing about. The heter that the Torah writes by nevela. Rabbi Yossi Glili Sava Keshehutra Nevela Hi Hutra. The heter was only set for the nevela, for the meat of the nevela, but Chalava v'Gida Lei Hutru. The chaylev and the gid was not permitted, and therefore V'chi Itzrich Kra LeHeter Ana Hudasa. So over here, when the Torah writes Yeasa L'Chol Melacha, it's coming to be matter. The melacha that could be used, the chaylev could be used for work. But Rabbi Akiva says, Keshehutra and nevela, chalava v'gida nami hutra. When the Torah writes the heter of nevela, it's including also a heter for the chaylev and the gid, and therefore v'chi itzrich kral tumah v'tara. Even though when the Torah wrote loy seichlu would have included an isra hana as well, like Rabavo, but the Torah was matered by nevela. When the Torah is mater nevela, it includes the chaylev and the gid as well. So we know already that it's mutter. So therefore over here, when the Torah writes the union of doing malacha, it's talking only about tumah and tara, not the heter. The heter we learned out from nevela already. That's what the machlokes is based on, how you interpret the heter by nevela. But they're not arguing about the meaning of the word loy seichlu in the machlokes of Rabavo and Chizkiah. So now the Gemara goes back to Rabbi Yossi Aglili's opinion. For Rabbi Yossi Aglili. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili over here is saying, the Gemara is now interpreting Rabbi Yossi Aglili's opinion that he understands that when the Torah is mater by nevela, so nevela, that heter does not include the chaylev and the gid. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili, ashkach chaylev, the shari rachmana bana. So right over here I see that this is pasuk, ye asal l'chol malacha. So the Torah is saying that you can use chaylev, you could have anah of chaylev. Ela gid, name it the aser. But according to him, if gid anasha is not included in the heter of nevela, should it be true that gid anasha is aser bahana? The Torah writes by gid anasha loy seichel, or lo yoichle, al yoichle b'nei Yisrael gid anasha, and we don't find any heter anah for it. Says the Gemara, iboy say mehachen nami daser. Yes, maybe Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds that gid anasha is aser bahana as well. That was Rab Shimon's opinion before, so maybe Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds that as well. Or iboy say me, if you want, I can tell you that the aser that really it is again iboy say me maisila b'kal v'chaymer, that Rabbi Yossi Aglili learns out with a kal v'chaymer that the gid anasha is mutter bahana. What's this kal v'chaymer? Uma chaylev she'onish kares mutter bahana. Chaylev, which is there's a einish of kares for it, and still it's mutter bahana. Gid she'ena onish kares, so the gid anasha, which is no einish of kares for it, lekal shekain, it should definitely be mutter bahana. So there's two things in the nevela. There's a chaylev inside the nevela, and there's a gid anasha in a nevela. If regarding the chaylev in a nevela, where there's a issa kares, the Torah says that it's mutter b'hana, for sure the gid anasha, which is inside the nevela, definitely it's also mutter b'hana, so there's a kal v'chaymer. Tosfos here points out that this kal v'chaymer is specifically regarding what's inside the body of a nevela. It's not a kal v'chaymer b'chlal b'negei to yisura yana, because otherwise, Tosfos says, you have shoyer haniskal. Shoyer haniskal is another issa, which is asa bahana, even though there is no kares. So what kind of kal v'chaymer is this? I could bring you an example of something that's not kares and still asa bahana. So I could say the same thing regarding gid anasha, that it's not kares and it would be asa bahana. Therefore, Tosfos says the kal v'chaymer is specifically regarding what I find in the animal of the nevela. So this is the kal v'chaymer. But Rab Shimon, the asar, now Rab Shimon holds that gid anasha is asa bahana. Why did he not hold of this kal v'chaymer? He says, Ikela Mifrach, I can point out to you that Chaylev actually has a leniency. Even though Chaylev has Karis, but I'll point you out a leniency that Nevela has. What is that? Chaylev sheken hutta meklale etzel chaya. Chaylev is an isser that's only the fats of a behema is aser. The Chaylev of a chaya is not aser. Taima begid shalihutam meklali etzel chaya. The gid anosha is aser both by a behema, by a chaya. It makes no difference. The gid anosha is always aser. So I see that there's a certain leniency regarding chaylev. Ve'edach, the other opinion, which is Rabbi Yossi Aglili that did say this kal v'chaymer, bebeheime ka'amrinon. I'm talking about the beheime of an avela. Bebeheime mi is like ishtari. Regarding a beheime, I don't find any leniency of chaylev. So therefore, this kal v'chaymer stands. Okay, so now the Gemara concluded this whole sugi over here, all the different isurim, and it tried to say that it's a machlekes tanoim as well. The Gemara pointed out that it's not a machlekes tanoim, but the bottom line is we had over here machlekes Rabavo and Chizkiya. When the Torah writes lo yoichal, le soichal, le soichlu, does that include isser hana or not? And Rabavo says it does. Chizkiya said it doesn't. It doesn't. Only if the Torah writes lo yei ochel. But the thing is, as we've seen, every time the Torah writes lo yoichal, and it should have included isser hana, the Torah always wrote an exception, that it's mutter b'hana. So what's really the bottom line? Is there any difference between Chizkiya and Rabavo? Says the Gemara, Mechti, let's see, I brought you all these psukim that it says regarding all these surim, and I asked you that it should have been asur b'hana, v'shaninu, and we answered all of them. We pointed out that there's an exception by each one of them. So if so, Chizkiya v'Rabavo b'mai pligi. What are they arguing about? Is there any case that they're actually arguing about? Says the Gemara, yes. B'chometz b'Pesach va'aliba de Rabbanon. Regarding chometz on Pesach, and according to the Rabbanon, over there by chometz it says lo yei ochel, and according to the Rabbanon that's an isser hana. And which other case, b'shoyer haniskal va'aliba de divrei hakoil. And regarding shoyer haniskal, according to everybody. Those are the only two cases where the Torah writes lo yei ochel, and it's going to be asur b'hana. But what's going to be the actual nafkamina between them? Still, there's no actual nafkamina. So everybody will agree in both of those cases that it's asur b'hana. Says the Gemara, Chizkiya nafikle miloi yei ochel. Chizkiya says that it's going to be asur b'hana because the Torah wrote lo yei ochel. But Rabavo nafikle, Rabavo says you don't learn out that these two are asur b'hana because the Torah switched the lashon to yei ochel. Where does he learn it out from? Minavela. He learns it out from Nevela, because by Nevela, when the Torah writes a Isser Achila, it explicitly is matter the Hana. From that I understand that in these two cases of Chometz and Sheir HaNiskal, where the Torah did not explicitly say a Heter Hana, they're going to be Asur b'Hana. I don't have to learn it out from Yei Ochel. Okay, but the question still remains, the halacha still remains the same. There's no practical difference between them. Mechti, let's see, Bein Lamar, both according to Chizkiya and according to Rabavo, Asurim Bahana. Sheir HaNiskal and Chometz are Asur b'Hana. Those are the only two cases. So, Mai Beinayu, what's the actual difference between them? Says the Gemara, the difference is going to come out in a side point. Ike Beinayu, the difference between them is going to be Chulin Shenishchetu Ba'azara. Regarding chulin that was shechted in the azara, is this isser of chulin shechted in the azara, is it an isser min ha-Torah or an isser mi de Rabbanon? And the Gemara makes a cheshbon over here as follows. Chizkiya's opinion is lo yei ochel, when the Torah writes lo yei ochel, regarding chometz and regarding sheir HaNiskal, lumu'uti hani. It's coming to exclude all other cases where the Torah writes lo yoichal, lo yoichal. It comes to tell me that in all those cases, lo yoichal means only isser achila. So oisai. So now when the Torah writes oisai regarding treifa, what was the full pasuk regarding treifa? Pasuk there says that you're not allowed to eat a treifa. And then it says, La kelef tashlichun oisai. So the pasuk there said, it was before on the pasuk, Lo yisaychelu, La kelef tashlichun oisai. So why did the Torah have to say, La kelef tashlichun oisai, that you throw it to the dogs? According to Chizkiya, when the Torah writes, Lo yei ochel, that already tells me that anything other than chometz and sheir HaNiskal is mutter b'hana. Why is the Torah writing oisai by treifa? It's coming to say that chulin shenishchetu ba'azara will be asur b'hana, and you learn it out from this pasuk min ha-Torah that it's asur b'hana. That is according to Chizkiya. Rabavo savar. What's Rabavo's opinion? Oisai lemutihani. No, it's the word oisai that comes to teach me that only treifa is mutter b'hana. But anything other than treifa is going to be asur b'hana. What does that refer to? Chometz and sheir HaNiskal. From where do I know that chometz and sheir HaNiskal is asur b'hana? Because I see by treifa the Torah has to give you a special heter, and therefore by chometz and sheir HaNiskal I know that it's going to be asur b'hana. L'mutihani. So hani is going on chometz and sheir HaNiskal. Chulin shenishchetu ba'azara lav da'iraisa. So the isser of chulin shenishchetu ba'azara, I don't have any pasuk for that. That's not min ha-Torah b'chlal. The whole isser of chulin shenishchetu ba'azara, not ta'achila, not ta'ano, it's not a isser min ha-Torah. So that's the only nafkamina that comes out. The nafkamina between Chizkiah and Rabavo after the entire thing is regarding the word oisai, that it says by Treifa, could I be memayich chulin shenishchetu ba'azara, or I can't. That's the whole nafkamina that comes out from this ganze Maisa. Now the Gemara brings another opinion on this. We had the opinions of Chizkiah and Rabavo. The Gemara brings a third opinion. Yosef ahumer Rabbana kamed Rab Shmuel ben Achmeini. V'Yosef v'Ka'ama Mishmei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So he was sitting in front of Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmeini and he asked the question in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Minayin l'chol yisurin shebetayre. From where do I know that all yisurin of the Torah, that if they're asur b'achila, they're also asur b'hana. Now the Gemara says kol yisurin shebetayre, but it only refers to chametz and shayir haniskal, because all other yisurin, we already pointed out that the Torah explicitly is matter than b'hana. So all the yisurim in the Torah refers only to chametz and shayir haniskal. From where do I know that they're mutter b'hana? U'ma'iniu chametz v'pesach v'shayir haniskal. Minayin, from where do I know? Says the Gemara, from where do we know? We just finished the whole sugya. Rabbi Shua ben Levi didn't learn this Gemara. He didn't know any of these limudim. Tepik lei mi lo yechel. Both by chametz and shayir haniskal, it says lo yechel. Says the Gemara, no. Lo yechel isra achila mashma. His opinion is lo yechel only means isra achila. Does not mean isra no. Mashmale. Isra no loy mashmale. Does not mean isra no. So we saw before, even according to Chizkiah, it's only because you learned it out from Shrotzim that the Torah wrote lachem. So he says yechel means isra no. The word yechel itself is not mashma isra no. So he says I can't learn out from yechel that it means isra no. How about Tepikle Menevela? Why can't you learn it out from Nevela? The fact that by Nevela the Torah has to give a special heterano, so that shows that otherwise it would be Asa Bahana, and that goes in Chametz and Sheranisko. Why didn't you learn it out from there? And it says the Gemara Sava like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shua ben Levi held like Rabbi Yehuda. We learned this before. What did the Gemara say? The Amad Dvarim Kichsavan. When the Torah writes by Nevela, the heterano, it's not coming to say a heterano. It's coming to tell you that you have to sell it to a guy and gift it to a ger toisha. So it's coming to teach me something specific, not to teach me the heterano. So I can't learn out anything from that. Isa v'lak Rabbi Yehuda, says the Gemara. So if he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that you can't learn it out from Nevela, what did we say before in the Gemara? Tepikle mehechad anafkalei Rabbi Yehuda. From where does Rabbi Yehuda learn out that everything that's asa ba'achil is also asa b'hana, unless the Torah says otherwise? Milakelev tashlichan oisai. He learns it out from lakelev tashlichan oisai. That only treif is mutar b'hana, but not anything else, which would be chametz and shayran iskal. So we had three opinions from where you can learn this out. Either from the Lashon Lo Yechel, or from the Vela, or from Treifa. Why did Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi not hold of either of these? So the Gemara explains he didn't hold from the limud of Treifa. Kasava chulin shenishchetu ba'azara da'iraisa. He holds that from Oisa, that it says by Lakel Tashlichan Oisa, it's coming to teach you that chulin shenishchetu ba'azara is asr. So I don't have that pasuk available either. So minayin, from where do you learn this out? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi brings a completely different pasuk. Mamish from a place that he says the chsiv, the pasuk says by a carbon chatas. Kol chatas asher yuva midama v'gaimer, a carbon chatas that the blood was brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. So the pasuk there concludes, you're not allowed to eat it, be'eish tisarif. The full pasuk is, lo yisayachal be'eish tisarif. You have to burn it. What are we talking about? We're talking about a carbon chatas that the blood had to be sprinkled on the outside mizbeach, not on the inside mizbeach. But a mistake was done, and they did bring it in the blood inside. If the blood was brought inside, so you can't use it, you can't eat it, you have to burn it in the fire. So the question is, this is an extra pasuk. Why is it an extra pasuk? She'ein tamud loyme beish tisarif. The Torah did not have to tell me the isra of ano over here, that it has to be, that you can't eat it and you have to burn it. Ma tamud loyma. Why does it say beish tisarif? Why does the Torah have to say this? If I don't need it over here, and the Gemara explains very bekitzer why I don't need it for here. There's another pasuk where it says v'hinei soidaf. Where does it say the pasuk v'hinei soidaf? So the full pasuk over there is this is on Yamayim Shmini Lamiluim. Ve'asir achatos darash Moshe v'hinei soidaf v'yiktzar felalazav v'lisam v'na'ana sarim leimar. That they went and they took the carbon chatas that was brought on that day and they burnt it. And Moshe Rabbeinu asked them, why did you burn it? I told you to eat it, even though they were an Einon, that Nadav and Avihu passed away. Moshe Rabbeinu told them to eat it, so he was upset at them that they burnt it. Then the pasuk there says, Madua lechaltem es chatas b'mokem hakodesh ki kodesh kadashim hein lehuva as doma la kodesh pnima. The blood was not brought inside, so you didn't have to burn it. What do you see from there? If you would have, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them, did you make a mistake maybe and bring the blood inside? If you would have brought the blood inside when you weren't supposed to, you would have to burn it. But you didn't. The blood wasn't brought inside. So why did you burn it? So there in Parshas Shmini, I see that if the blood was brought inside, you have to burn it. So why does the Torah have to say over here again, Be'esh Tisarev? I see it already over there. So if im eine inyan lekufay, so if that be'esh tisarev is not needed for there, teneyu inyan lekelev. So teneyu inyan lechol isurin shebetayra. So learn from here to other isurin in the Torah. When the Torah writes a isar achila, it means not only the isar achila but also the isar ano. Lechol isurin shebetayra. V'meine inyan la'achila, and if I don't need to use this for an isar achila, the isar achila it says by other places in the Torah, teneyu inyan le'isar hana. The Torah is telling me that in every other place where it's asa b'achila, it's also asa b'hana. So Rashi says this is one of the midas sha'atayra nidreshes behen, even though it's not in that braisa of the Yud Gimel midas sha'atayra nidreshes behen, but there's actually another braisa where it says it is lamed beis midas sha'atayra nidreshes behen. There are 32 midas sha'atayra nidreshes behen, and one of them is this concept. The Torah sometimes writes something extra, and there's nothing to be learned out in that place, and you have to put it into a different halacha. So over here as well, when the Torah writes Loise Chelu Be'esh Tisreif, or it's the exact lashon of pasuk Be'esh Tisareif, it's not being used for the Karban Chatas, but you learn it out for other isurim. For which isurim? For Sheira Niskal and Chametz, that it's Asa B'achila. Today when you listen no ima fragt the Gemara ima kan besreifa af kol yisurin shebetayre sreifa. If so, the Torah is writing Be'esh Tisarev, would that mean that I learn out to both chametz and sheira niskal that you have to burn them? So the Gemara says no. Amakra ba'kodesh Be'esh Tisarev. It's this over here, only kodesh, only this chatas that the blood was brought inside you have to burn. But the other isurim that we're learning out too, they don't have to be burnt. So it's very interesting. According to this opinion, the isur hana of chametz is learnt out not from what it says by chametz, not the lashon of lo yachel by chametz. It's learnt out from a pasuk by Karban Chatos, where there's an extra pasuk of lo yisaychlu, lo yisachelu, be'esh tisreifu. That's from where you learn out the isur hana by both chametz and sheira niskal. It's a third opinion.